unrehearsed program. The views expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic:
Our exit strategy from Iraq in Passion for Truth award-winning program.
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. Congressional Democrats are demanding assurances that the reduction of troops will go forward regardless of the circumstances in Iraq. Will Washington blunder profoundly if it left Iraq now? We'll ask our panelists next. Dr. Syed Ali Wasf, President, Society for International Reforms and Research, also professor at George Mason University. Dr. Dennis Warner from Pax Christi, the International Catholic Peace Movement. Dr. Warner has worked in more than 50 countries for a variety of international, governmental, and private organizations. Last year, he spent considerable time in Iraq working on humanitarian relief with the U.S. Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance. Tim Ferriss, a news commentator and a legal analyst. Dr. Gregory Staunton, President, Genocide Watch, formerly with Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars. Dr. Staunton is currently professor at the University of Mary Washington. Dr. Joseph Annunziata, with expertise on international affairs as a former professor. Dr. Annunziata was an advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Defense on international issues. He was also a senior staff member at the White House. Welcome you all.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Starting with you, Joe, under public and political pressure, if the U.S. leaves too early and overstates its progress in Iraq, you think we will have disastrous consequences?
I don't think so. We may have some consequences overseas in Iraq, but in terms of the political reaction in this country, I think Americans would be happy to be out of Iraq, and perhaps the situation would be similar to what happened in Vietnam when we finally withdrew after much pressure from our domestic citizens.
Various factions, Greg, could position themselves, if we left early, they could position themselves for a civil war.
That's actually my greatest worry. As a scholar of genocide, if you look at what happened after we pulled out of Southeast Asia, and I think we did so prematurely. In fact, there was genocide in Cambodia. It cost about 2 million lives. And I'm not saying that that will happen in Iraq, but I think that the danger is definitely there, that the tensions between the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds are so palpable. You can see it. I mean, just on Wednesday, 85 bodies were found, murdered in Baghdad alone. There really is potential for a civil war there. So I think that our strategy for withdrawal, which undoubtedly we have to have, needs to be intelligent, and it has to be a strategy where the timing is based on what the Iraqi government wants.
Tim? What do you think? We could expose Iraq to its hostile neighbors if we left too early? Or even if we scaled back the troops?
That is a concern, and there's really no better exit strategy than to win. There is no substitute for victory. And yes, I am concerned, especially with Iran being as aggressive as it's been. And it's, I think, pretty well known that they don't like us. So yes, I do think that we could run a serious risk by pulling out. We've got to stay at least until we've stabilized this government. The bombing that we're doing in the Sunni Triangle is one of the things that is aimed at getting rid of one of the last pockets, or at least cutting it down to where it can be managed so that we can turn that over. Okay. And as the Iraqi government stabilizes, then we can begin to think about it. But that's the only way we're ever going to win this war.
Dennis, what's your take?
Well, I can't accept that. this issue, we can't accept anything except victory. That's what kept us in Vietnam in active conflict for 8 years, with the result in which the North took over the entire area anyway. It's caused us to have 3 years of devastating war in Iraq, which is destroying the Iraqi people. It's destroying the American sense of fairness and how to deal with the world. We have to recognize that the United States is a major part of the problem in Iraq today. Now, we can't change what has happened. That has happened. But our very presence there is a festering sore that only aggravates all the problems. No country likes to be occupied, and the United States is an occupying power no matter how you look at it. And the longer we stay there, the greater the resistance grows, the greater the conflict grows. We can't stop the conflict, but we're feeding it by our very presence.
The fact, Dr. Ali, that U.S. has been offering report after report positive accounts of progress in Iraq, you think that's part of an exit strategy?
Well, yes, I think so. And I think the two honorable panelists discuss about being there for a considerable period of time. I mean, I'm talking about the U.S. presence there. I agree with them because, first of all, Iraq should not be mistaken with Vietnam. Second, those congressmen or U.S. policymakers or the U.S. public, if they think that today, if they are going to exit from Iraq and Iraq is going to be better than what it is today, I think they are mistaken. There's going to be more bloodshed, instability in the region, a sort of, oil flow would be a problem, and regional economy would be in jeopardy. So that's going to be a long Pandora's box then if the U.S. exits today. So I am fully in favor of the U.S. presence in Iraq for at least a couple of more years in order to make that presence viable and feasible for a better future.
Well, Joe, if we do make an exit strategy, I mean, if we do, in making an exit, should we take a lesson from the British who got frustrated in 1932, prematurely pulled out because they got frustrated in fostering democracy in Iraq, and it led to more violence in Iraq, the rise of dictatorship that we see now?
You know, we could say the same thing about Afghanistan. Did we leave prematurely from Afghanistan? I think we need a fundamental change in U.S. foreign policy. We should be out there trying to bring peace and democracy in countries of the world, but we should not be out there trying to force it on countries. We should not be out there bloodying people's noses. We should be peacemakers and not trying to do it through military force. And I think that if there is bloodshed because we leave either prematurely or on time, or as the President said 3 years ago when he landed on the aircraft carrier and he said, our mission is accomplished. I think our policy is now being directed by machismo, by the feeling that the U.S. is invincible, that we can do anything we want in the world. We're the most powerful politically, militarily, economically, and we should not have anybody refuse what we want to do for their own good.
Are we coming across, Dennis,